Happy Bibs Day, everybody. It's Farmer Dar here. I'm out in the backyard. In the background you can see the pergola and a couple of the beds, and it's a beautiful St. Louis evening. The sun's setting over there. I might not get this whole thing taped tonight before the sun goes down, but I just thought it'd be a good time to put a few ideas down, and I'd like to share them with you. As always with the Witnessing Whiteness series, I speak as an amateur. Certainly I don't want to ever claim to cover an entire topic thoroughly and perfectly. But there's something going on in St. Louis with Pride specifically, and so kind of what I want to talk about is a little bit, like I'd love for the ears of the white LGBTQ community to hear this, but certainly certain skin tones are given a lot more privilege in this country than others, and so that's kind of who I'm talking to. I've been thinking a lot the last few days about needs versus wants, and I think needs versus wants is something that it's easy for us to think through. I mean, actually, you can kind of get a really young person, elementary age, to kind of know the difference between needs and wants. Do I need this ice cream cone, or do I want this ice cream cone? And we'll be like, well, I don't need this ice cream cone, but I want it. It doesn't fall under needs. We need sustenance. So if that takes the form of an ice cream cone, yay, but that's not exactly what's up. Do we want a big house? Well, we don't need a big house, but maybe we want a big house, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you open up your big house and share it with lots of people, that can actually be a really wonderful thing. But it's a want necessarily, not a need necessarily. A lot of us have a lot of ability to get our needs met. We don't have to spend a whole lot of time thinking about needs versus wants. Whereas if you're a person who really has a difficult time getting your physical needs met, like your first basic needs, like eating and having shelter and having fresh, clean drinking water, you spend a little more time thinking about needs versus wants. If you don't have a whole lot of money, you probably spend a whole lot more time thinking about needs versus wants. Whereas the more comfortable you are, the less you really worry about that. And you might even find yourself saying, I really need an ice cream sandwich, when in fact, you just want an ice cream sandwich. The LGBTQ community is doing a lot of talk about safety. And, we're spending a lot of time, because of a lot of, very real, recent, tragic, violent events, concerned about safety. And we should be concerned about safety. There are a lot of unsafe things that are happening out there. We are all entitled to be physically and emotionally safe and secure. Like, that's an important thing. That's a need, by the way. Safety is a need, by the way. But I think sometimes when we're more comfortable, when we're used to having our needs met, we start having wants thought of as needs. And so some of us, when we think we're talking about safety, we're maybe not talking about safety. We're maybe talking about something like advantage or privilege. In this talk about safety, we should not be careless about it. We should talk about what it takes to be safe in our communities. And I think we should work together in really powerful ways to help make our communities safer for each other. But to do that means we're going to have to work on things like racism, sexism, classism, the ways we oppress each other. I mean, many of us don't think about how we harm each other in our community when we think about our safety and what we need to do to be safe. We think about these very horrible things like the massacres that have happened. And those things we also need to be safe from, but on the day-to-day, we're actually usually more in collaboration with each other and more likely that we're hurting each other than some stranger. Don't get me wrong, there's some strangers. Katie and I just got a real rude look because we were given a little PDA out in front of the restaurant, and this woman was like, well, anyway. But we were not in jeopardy of our safety. Now, I did keep turning my back as we were walking away just to be sure, because if that woman would have decided to act on her disgust of us and try to hurt us, then that would have been an unsafe thing. But just giving us a look, well, it was not nice and very unpleasant, and it definitely made me suspicious of her. But since she didn't come at me, I didn't necessarily perceive her as a threat to my personal safety or Katie's personal safety. Okay, so you know how we try to talk to people about needs versus wants, is this a need or is this a want when we're trying to prioritize things that are really important? Well, I think we need to do that with safety as well. Fireworks time in St. Louis. I think we need to do that with safety as well. I mean, are we talking about the need for real safety, real public safety, real personal safety, or are we just talking about getting and maintaining a system of advantage? Okay, and the reason I bring this up is because right now, Pride St. Louis has this big thing going on, and it's like they're doing this all in the name of safety. They're having the police be part of the Pride Parade with uniforms. Now, the community is split on this. There's many people in the community that are very publicly supportive of police systems and police. And then there's many in the community who are not. And then, of course, there's people who are all, various, shades of disagreement or agreement. But it has been asked year after year after year in St. Louis by a variety of people of color, transgender people of color, all sorts of people have asked year after year after year, please stop having the uniformed police in the Pride Parade. One year, a couple years ago, they were even leading the parade. So here we are on the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, and I don't know if you're not aware of this, but Stonewall, it was an action against violence from the police. And I'm going to put a couple of links in the comments section for you to just hear what it was like in the 60s for the LGBTQ community of all skin tones. It was really, really rough between us and the police. And why was it really, really rough? Because there were heterosexuals who wanted to maintain a system of advantage. And to do that, they needed to eliminate us from their view. Okay, so fast forward ahead. It's probably fair to say that since the time of Stonewall, portions of the LGBTQ community are reconciled with the police. After all, there are many members of the LGBTQ community who are police officers. And I believe originally the Pride Board said, yes, please feel free to walk in the parade if you're a police officer, but just don't wear your uniform. Be who you are as a person, not as a system. Well, that got rescinded. So now the police are being asked to go ahead and march in uniform. Well, so if everything truly had been healed since the 60s between the LGBTQ community and the police, you would think, oh wow, this is wonderful progress. This is great. This is fabulous. That's if everything were reconciled. But it's not. Our community is exceedingly diverse. And right now our community is split on this issue because the police right now have a horrible reputation in St. Louis. A horrible reputation. I'm going to give you a link to the Ethical Society of Police, which is our second police union. It's sometimes referred to as the Black or African American Police Union. It's actually for a variety of individuals. So the Ethical Society of Police they put out a report about how horrible the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department is. I'm going to attach that link for you. It was in 2016. And so what I'm trying to say is the difficulty with the police for the LGBTQ community is not something that stopped with Stonewall. It's not something that has healed in the last 50 years. Portions of our community are still very much targeted. Kiwi Herring, transgender woman of color, was murdered by the police a couple of years ago. Right now, Kim Gardner, one of our public officials, is taking about a dozen police officers to task for a variety of racist and homophobic Facebook posts that they've posted. Basically, these police officers no longer have any credibility in court when it comes to their testimony, because they've shown that they're not just implicitly biased, but they're overtly racist and overtly heterosexist. So these problems with the St. Louis Police Department, they have not been resolved, okay? Yet, there are real concerns in our community about safety. So what does the LGBTQ community do? Well, unfortunately, what I think I'm seeing in the LGBTQ community of St. Louis is a split, and it's generally, not completely, but generally down lines of race. People who have more comfortable relationships with the police are generally skin-privileged people. Not always, but frequently. I can tell you some stories where I have been treated exceedingly well by police when people standing right next to me were being treated exceedingly poorly. I share that story with you. I have a handful of those stories. So people who are used to having a certain amount of advantage are very comfortable with maintaining that advantage. We're not necessarily thinking about our actual safety. We're thinking about our advantage. So I think what we need to do, if we want to imagine an LGBTQ community that's less racist or not racist, that's less cis-sexist or not cis-sexist, sexist, or even the issue of class is involved here, of course. The more money you have, frequently you can get through the judicial system a little easier if you got a little more money. But ultimately, people experience the St. Louis Police Department differently. And that is an indisputable fact that has been recorded and documented within the last 5 years. And I can just share so many stories with you. I would hope that friends of mine who do watch this video would maybe share some stories with you in the comments about how we've experienced the police differently. So if you are LGBTQ, no matter who you are absolutely entitled to safety. You are absolutely entitled to safety. No one should harm you. No one should put a hand on you. You are entitled to be safe and cared for. But if you really think about the difference between safety and advantage, I think you'll find that frequently when you're just with a group of your buds, you're usually pretty safe. If you're doing some common sense things, you're usually pretty safe. Now look, I can't account for these random acts of terror that are happening where people are coming with guns and doing horrible things. There's not much you can do to stop that mayhem. If someone's intent on mayhem, it's really, really, really hard to stop them. But the way that we can work on that is by tightening up our communities, identifying, people earlier and quicker who need some community support, or who are just downright hostile to our community, and keeping our eyes open and watching for them. We need parallel structures. We need parallel structures so that we don't have to call on a system that makes a large portion of our community distinctly unsafe so that other portions of our community can maintain advantage. Now, you might be thinking, what kind of advantage could you possibly be wanting? Whether it's intentionally thought of or just a subconscious bias, what advantages do skin privileged LGBTQ people have by having the police around? Well, I don't think you have to, look far to see how many skin privileged people have abused people of color with the police. Barbecue Becky. I mean, let's face it, she just saw people of color having a barbecue and she called the police on them. All right, so what was her advantage there? You know what? It is just exactly how in the 60s, the cisgender heterosexual businesses and people didn't want us around. And so they had the police come raid our bars, they had the police come raid our clubs, they had the police come raid our coffee houses and our bookstores, and they drove us out. That's the advantage that the cisgender heterosexual people wanted. And they used the police to get that. So, am I saying that skin privileged LGBTQ people don't necessarily want people of color on? I'm afraid that there is some racism in our community. And some people do use the police to maintain a system of advantage. Their advantage? Not having to think about the racism in our city. Some other examples of advantage versus actual safety. So your actual personal safety, say you park a couple blocks away from a Pride event, you lock your car, and you walk to the Pride event with 2 or 3 friends, because it's good to always be in the buddy system. I always recommend the buddy system to everybody. And as you walk to the Pride Fest with your 2 or 3 friends, hopefully you get there safely without anybody harming you. Almost always that is the case. Now, every once in a while, somebody's going to come out and try to save you, and then that's always uncomfortable. But in general, almost thousands of people very easily and safely get from their car to the Pride event and do just fine. But what if something's happening at your car? So you left your car locked and somebody breaks in your car and they steal something. Is that safety? Well, actually, I'm going to go ahead and put that one under advantage, okay? If you were not there and nobody took your physical being and threatened you as they got in your car, if you were not present, somebody just busted your window or maybe they reached in and got something for your car and took something from you, that's definitely not nice, okay? Maybe they took something from you, but you were not in danger at that point. That there, you wanted the advantage of not having your stuff messed with. Hey, look, I know that sounds like a stretch, but no, you were not in danger. You weren't even at your car. You want the advantage of not having your stuff messed with. Okay, we have to have that conversation of what's really safety and what's just, I want the advantage. Now, here's what I want to say about the advantage of having your stuff not messed with. I would love for everybody to have that advantage. There are people in our city who don't have homes, and every winter, the police come and take their stuff and they toss it in the dumpster. Unhoused people lose their camps. They don't want their stuff messed with. They would like the advantage of not having their stuff messed with. So when we are at Pride and we lock our car door and we're like, my stuff's safe, we have the advantage of not having our stuff messed with. Think about what it would be like for that advantage to be extended to everybody, even people with no car or people who have to sleep in their car, who don't want their car towed. So the Invisible Knapsack by Peggy McIntosh, I'm going to go ahead and attach that too. In general, there are a lot of advantages that people with skin privileges get that are not extended to people with darker skin. And right now, we are not in a time in our history where authority figures of our government, be they police, be they ICE, are actually treating people wonderfully in our country. Because when we're pulled over, I mean, I went through a checkpoint coming up from southern Texas, and you know, they were stopping every car with a person who appeared to be Latinx, but me and my wife, we were just waved on through because we are pretty skin privileged. But I want to talk with you about safety in the LGBTQ community, because I want us all safe. I want us all safe, and I think every single person in the community is entitled to safety. You are entitled to safety. No matter who you are entitled to physical safety. And so when we talk about what it takes to be safe in public, to have public safety, that conversation needs to be winnowed down to real safety issues. We have to, just like we have to learn the difference between our needs and our wants, okay? We have to learn the difference between safety, public safety, and public advantages, okay? So, you know, are we really looking for public safety, or are we looking for a public advantage? And right now, to use the police to create an air of authority in a pride parade, that there is to create an advantage for skin privileged people. And that there is a total slap in the face to the community, the LGBTQ community of color, who has struggled so much with police abuse in our community. And again, guys, I'm not making this stuff up. It is totally documented how racist and horrible the St. Louis Police Department, St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department is systemically. Like, it's not just a couple bad apples. There's a pattern that the Ethical Society of Police, the second police union, okay, because the first one was all white and very racist, okay, like, they have documented the atrocities. It is an unsafe institution. Why, when we, in the name of safety, why are we choosing an institution that is known to be unsafe? And again, guys, I'm going to say it. It's because skin privileged people are wanting an advantage. All right, so, you know, we got to know the difference between our needs and wants, and we should probably also look at the difference between safety and advantage. And, you know, if you're used to always having the advantages, you know, you're probably going to mistake a lot of public advantage as hallmarks of public safety. You know, hey, please leave your commentary. I'd like this to be part of the dialogue. You know, my angle on this is I just want us to start thinking about safety versus advantage. Happy Pride, everybody. Let's think about what we want to be.